Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I am going to discuss about pharyngeal apparatus. So this pharyngeal apparatus consists of ectodermal cleft, endodermal pouch and pharyngeal arch. In fish, this apparatus involved in the formation of gills is responsible for exchange of gases. Whereas in case of humans, this apparatus involved in the formation of head and neck. In human embryo, up to 4th week, the neck will not be formed. During time of 5th week of embryo, the neck is formed by elongation of region between stomatodium and developing heart. The stomatodium is nothing but it is a future oral cavity. So this elongation is mainly due to mesodermal thickening. This mesodermal thickening in the form of arches will be seen around the cranial part of foregut, or we can say primitive pharynx. So this mesodermal thickening will be seen around the primitive pharynx. That's why it is called as pharyngeal arches. If you see the extension of mesodermal thickening, so on the back side, that is on the dorsal aspect, we can see there is a presence of hindbrain vesicle. And imagine this is the midline. This is on the ventral aspect. So this mesodermal thickening, it is present in the form of arches. So dorsally, it extends from hindbrain vesicle and passes forward along the side of the pharynx and passes ventrally and medially, reach the midline and will be fused with the corresponding arches. So like this, we are having 6 pharyngeal arches will be present around the primitive pharynx. Out of 6 arches, the 5th arch will be disappear. So totally we are having 5 arches will be there. First, second, third, fourth and 6th arch will be present. So this mesoderm, it's coming from where? So this mesoderm is coming from paraxial mesoderm and lateral plate of mesoderm. And this mesoderm also invaded by neural crest cells. This neural crest cells invade the mesenchyme and also is responsible for formation of cartilage, bone and connective tissue of head and neck. So we are having, these are the pharyngeal arches. When you talk about the arches, just I am showing the red dot, this is called as pharyngeal arches. Externally it is covered by ectoderm. This ectoderm dips into groove and forming the ectodermal cleft. On the internal aspect, this endoderm dips into groove and extends outwards towards the ectodermal cleft. This is called as endodermal pouch. And this is on the external aspect, we can see this is ectodermal cleft. Now we'll see the extension of pharyngeal arches. So this pharyngeal arches extend dorsally from hindbrain vesicle and passes forwards along the lateral side of primitive pharynx. Once it reaches the midline, it will be fused with corresponding arches. So this is the midline, it will be fused with opposite arches. So totally we are having 6 arches will be there. Among that 5th arch will be disappear. So we are having 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 6th arch will be present. So this pharyngeal arches externally it is covered with ectoderm. So this ectoderm dips into groove and continues with the similar arches. This is called as ectodermal cleft. On the internal aspect, this endoderm dips into groove and continues with the similar arches. This groove invaginates towards the ectodermal cleft. Now this is called as endodermal pouch. Now we'll see the mesoderm. The mesodermal thickening is nothing but it is the pharyngeal arches. So this mesoderm is coming from paraxial mesoderm and also lateral plate mesoderm. And this mesoderm also invaded by neural crest cells. This cells is responsible for formation of cartilage and connective tissue of head and neck. Now we'll see in this session, now we are going to discuss about only pharyngeal arches derivatives. In this session, we are going to discuss about pharyngeal arches derivatives. So, this is the ectoderm, this is the endoderm, and inside this is the mesoderm. So, this mesoderm is nothing but these cells or pluripotent cells. This cell is going to give rise to 4 important derivatives. Number 1, artery. Number 2, cartilage. Number 3, muscle. Number 4, nerves. So each arch consists of 4 derivatives. Now let's see the first pharyngeal arch derivatives. So this first pharyngeal arch derivatives is otherwise called as mandibular arch. So what is the nerve of mandibular arch? It is the mandibular nerve. In human embryo, the first pharyngeal arch consists of double innervation. So we are having mandibular nerve, and one more nerve is there. There is a chorda tympani nerve. So next we'll go for cartilage. The first arch cartilage is called as Meckel's cartilage. This Meckel's cartilage consists of dorsal end and ventral end. So in this diagram you can see this is the ventral aspect. This dotted line what I am showing, this is the first pharyngeal arch. So it consists of ventral end, this is the dorsal end. So dorsal end of cartilage it gives rise to malleolus, incus and spine of sphenoid. So these are the 3 important structures which arises from the dorsal end of Meckel's cartilage. Whereas ventral end of Meckel's cartilage is surrounded by mesenchyme. Is undergo membranous ossification and give rise to mandible, maxilla, zygomatic bone, palatine bone and part of temporal bone. So these are the bones which is arises from the ventral end of the Meckel's cartilage. So now you can see the part of cartilage between dorsal end and ventral end, this cartilage is disappear. But the perichondrium, that is nothing but it is a covering of cartilage, this perichondrium will be remain in the form of fibrous sheet. It gives rise to 2 important ligaments. This ligament is called as anterior ligament of malleolus and spine of, that is sphenomandibular ligament, which extends from spine of sphenoid to the lingula of the mandible. So this perichondrium or this fibrous sheet gives rise to anterior ligament and sphenomandibular ligament. So this is the cartilage. Next we'll go for muscles. What are the muscles which is arises from the first arch cartilage? Number 1 will be the muscles of mastication. You know the 4 muscles are there in the muscles of mastication. Number 1 will be the medial pterygoid, lateral pterygoid, masseter and temporalis muscles. In the mandibular nerve, from the posterior division, one more nerve is there, that is called as inferior alveolar nerve. This inferior alveolar nerve is going to give rise to one branch. That branch is called as nerve to mylohyoid. This nerve to mylohyoid supplies anterior belly of digastric muscle and mylohyoid muscle. And one more muscle comes under the first pharyngeal arch, that is the tensor tympani muscle and tensor veli palatini muscle. So these are the muscle which is arises from the first pharyngeal arch. Next we'll go for artery. Maxillary artery is arises from the first pharyngeal arch. So these are the derivatives of first pharyngeal arch. Next we'll go for second pharyngeal arch derivatives. So second pharyngeal arch is called as hyoid arch. It is called as hyoid arch. The nerve of second arch is the facial nerve. If you see the cartilage, the name of cartilage which is from the second arch derivatives is called as Richard cartilage. This Richard cartilage also consists of dorsal end and ventral end. This dorsal end gives rise to styloid process and stapes, whereas the ventral end gives rise to lesser cornu of hyoid bone and upper part of body of hyoid bone. So the part of cartilage will be disappeared between dorsal and ventral end. Some perichondrium will be remain. This perichondrium or fibrous sheath is going to give rise to one important ligament. That ligament is called as stylohyoid ligament. Next we'll see about muscles. So what are the muscles which is arises from second arch? So this is the facial nerve. So automatically all the facial muscle is derived from second pharyngeal arch. And one more muscle, that is stapedius muscle, which is arises from second arch. One more muscle, there will be a posterior belly of digastric and stylohyoid muscle. So these are the muscle which derived from second pharyngeal arch. Next we'll go for artery. Stapedial artery is arises from second pharyngeal arch. Next we'll go for third pharyngeal arch derivatives. So in the third pharyngeal arch there is no specific name. So the nerve which is arises from the third pharyngeal arch will be the glossopharyngeal nerve. Next we'll go for cartilage. Cartilage, it consists of ventral end and dorsal end. In the third arch, what happens? The dorsal end will be disappear. The ventral end give rise to greater cornu of hyoid bone and lower part of body of hyoid bone. So this is the two important derivatives which is arises from the ventral end of the second pharyngeal arch. Next, muscles. If we talk about muscle, there is only one muscle which is arises from the third pharyngeal arch, that is the stylopharyngeus muscles. If we talk about artery, common carotid artery and internal carotid arteries arises from the third pharyngeal arch. Next we'll go for fourth arch derivatives. If we talk about the nerve of fourth arch is the superior laryngeal branch of vagus nerve. Next we'll go for cartilage. The fourth arch cartilage fused with sixth arch cartilage to form laryngeal cartilage. So the laryngeal cartilage is derived from fourth and sixth arch derivatives. So what are the laryngeal cartilage? We are having thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage, arytenoid cartilage, corniculate and uniform. So these are the cartilages which is arises from the fourth arch derivatives. Next we'll go for muscle. The only extrinsic muscle, only the muscle cricothyroid muscle. This is the only muscle lies externally. This is the muscle of larynx. And next, muscles of soft palate except tensor veli palatine muscle. And next, muscles of pharynx. So these are the muscle which is arises from the fourth arch. Next we'll go for artery. On the right side, it gives rise to subclavian artery. On the left side, it gives rise to arch of aorta. So these are the derivatives of fourth pharyngeal arch. Next we'll go for sixth pharyngeal arch. As we know, the fifth will be disappear. So next we'll go for sixth pharyngeal arch derivatives. The nerve of sixth arch is the recurrent laryngeal nerve. So the cartilage, the sixth arch cartilage is fused with fourth arch cartilage to form laryngeal cartilage. We already mentioned. Next we'll go for muscles. So all the intrinsic muscles of larynx is derived from the sixth arch except cricothyroid. This cricothyroid is arises from fourth arch. Next we'll go for artery. On the right side, it gives rise to pulmonary artery. On the left side, it gives rise to ductus arteriosus. So these are the derivatives of pharyngeal. Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I am going to discuss about some interesting topic, that is development of face. So the development of face, it depends upon inductive influence of two centers. Number one, prosencephalic organic center and rhomencephalic organic center. So this prosencephalic center is derived from precaudal mesoderm. This mesoderm is derived from primitive streak and lies ventral to the prosencephalic organic center, whereas the rhomencephalic center lies ventral to the hindbrain. This prosencephalic organic center gives rise to visual apparatus, inner ear, upper 1/3 of the face. Whereas the rhomencephalic organic center give rise to middle ear and external ear, middle 1/3 of the face and lower 1/3 of the face. Now, if we talk about the facial development, it is developed from 5 processes. So, what are the 5 processes? Number 1, unpaired frontonasal process. Number 2, paired maxillary process. Number 3, paired mandibular processes. So this process, or we can say this is a prominence, will be seen around the stomatodium. So this is the stomatodium, that is a future oral cavity. If you see above, we are having the frontonasal process. On either side, this is the maxillary process. Below, this is the mandibular process. So all these processes will be seen around the oral cavity. Now let's see how the frontonasal process is derived. During time of 4th week of embryo, that is the head folding, we can see the two bulging will be seen on the ventral aspect of the embryo. So you can see this is a developing brain and this is a developing heart. This is the two bulging will be seen in the ventral aspect of the embryo. Between these two, we can see this area is called as stomatodium. It's forming a future oral cavity. I already mentioned all this prominence will be seen around the oral cavity. Now, if you see the frontonasal process derived from the mesoderm, which covers the forebrain vesicle. So this is the forebrain vesicle. So here the mesoderm, what happened? It's undergo proliferations. Once it undergo proliferation, it leads to downward growth. It leads to downward growth and lies above the stomatodium. Now you can understand this frontonasal process lies cranial to the stomatodium. You can see this diagram. This is the ventral aspect of the embryo. So this is the frontal nasal process. It lies above the stomatodium. This is the future oral cavity. Now you can see next process, that is a paired mandibular process. We already finished the first pharyngeal arch, is otherwise called as mandibular arch. This mandibular arch extends from hindbrain vesicle and passes forward, and once it reaches the midline, it will be fuses with the opposite side. So this mandibular arch or pharyngeal arch, it lies below the stomatodium. From the dorsal end of mandibular process, or we can say mandibular end or mandibular arch, the maxillary process, that is a triangular projection, will be arises from the dorsal end of the mandibular arch. Now you can see this maxillary process, now it lies lateral to the stomatodium. So the facial development is developed from the 5 processes. Unpaired frontonasal process, it lies cranial to the stomatodium. Unpaired maxillary process lies lateral to the stomatodium. Unpaired mandibular process lies below or caudal to the stomatodium. So these are the 5 processes. This processes is nothing but it is a mesodome and it is covered by ectoderm. There is a proliferation of mesodome and it's covered by ectoderm. Okay. Now, after formation of these processes, first step, there is a formation of nasal placoid. So where the nasal placoid is formed? This nasal placoid is formed in the frontonasal processes. So here you can see this is the frontonasal process lies above the stomatodium. Here what happens, this ectodermal cells is undergo proliferation on either side of the midline. So this ectodermal thickening is called as nasal placoid. So after formation of nasal placoid, what happened? This nasal placoid is invaginate to form a nasal pits. Now this nasal pits will be communicate with the stomatodium or oral cavity. This nasal pits deepens to form a nasal sac. This nasal sac form a anterior nasal aperture. Around the nasal pit, around the margin, we can see horseshoe-shaped mesodermal elevation. So you can see on the medial aspect, this is called as medial nasal process. On either side, this blue color what I show, this is called as lateral nasal process. So this medial nasal process lies between the 2 nasal pits, whereas lateral nasal process lies lateral to the nasal pits. Next, how the lower lip will be formed. Next, we'll see how the lower lip is formed. That is development of lower lip. So this mandibular process on the both side, what happened? It will be fuses or move towards the midline and fuses with the opposite side. As a result, what happened? The fused mandibular arch. The fused mandibular arch and give rise to upper lip, upper jaw, chin and lower part of cheek. You can say this is the derivatives which is coming from the paired mandibular processes. So the paired mandibular process will be fuses in the midline and give rise to upper lip, upper jaw, chin and lower part of the cheek. Okay, next let's see the formation of nasolacrimal duct. You know, the maxillary process which is arises from the dorsal end of the mandibular arch. So this is the maxillary process. This is a triangular projection. So this maxillary process will grow medially and fused with lateral nasal processes. Before fusion, there is a groove. This groove is called as nasolacrimal groove. Here what happened? In this groove, the ectodermal cells undergo proliferation and leads to solid ectodermal cord. Later what happened? This ectodermal cord is detached from the surface ectoderm and will be buried into the underlying mesodome. As a result, this ectodermal cord is converted into nasolacrimal duct. So, nasolacrimal duct is a ectodermal origin. So, if you see the connection of nasolacrimal duct, above it's connected with the medial angle of the eye and below it's communicated with the inferior meatus of nose. So when the maxillary process grows towards medially, you note here you can see this is the nasal pit. So on either side of the nasal pit, the blue color what I show, this is the medial nasal process. So when the maxillary process grow medially, the medial nasal process of both the side will be joined on both the side. It will be joined to form one segment. This segment is called as intermaxillary segment. This intermaxillary segment gives rise to three important structures. Number one, philtrum of upper lip, premaxilla and primary palate. So this is the three important structures which arises from the intermaxillary segment. Number one will be the philtrum of upper lip. Number two will be the premaxilla, which contains the 4 incisor teeth, and primary palate. So in the skull you can see the primary palate lies in front of the incisive fossa. So this, after formation of this intermaxillary segment, it continues above with the nasal septum. Now when the maxillary process grow medially, the medial nasal process also grow towards medially to form a intermaxillary segment. Simultaneously the frontonasal process also become narrow and involve the formation of forehead, dorsum of nose and tip of nose. So these are the derivatives which is coming from the frontonasal processes. Next we'll go for development of upper lip. So this maxillary process, when it fuses with the lateral nasal process and gradually it is fuses with the medial nasal process. As a result, what happened? This nasal pit separated from stomatodium. So this maxillary process, first it fuses with the lateral nasal process and gradually grow medially and fuses with the medial nasal process. As a result, what happened? This nasal pit communication will be cut off from the stomatodium. So this is the formation of upper lip. Now you understand first, this is the lateral part of upper lip. This is medial part of upper lip. So if we talk about the mesodermal origin, the lateral part of the lip arises from the maxillary process on both the side, whereas in the medial part is derived from, that is philtrum of upper lip is derived from frontonasal processes. This is about the mesodermal origin. Next come to the ectodermal origin. On the lateral side it is covered by ectoderm of maxillary processes. On the medial side, that is on the philtrum of the upper lip, its above also is covered by ectoderm of maxillary process. That's why the upper lip innervation, the whole ectoderm is derived from the ectoderm of maxillary process. That's why the upper lip is supplied by the maxillary division of trigeminal nerve. Next we'll see about the development of nasal. Okay, next we'll go to the development of nasal cavity. So in the first there is a formation of nasal placoid. The nasal placoid is nothing but it is an ectodermal thickening of frontonasal process on either side of the midline. So after nasal placoid, what happened? It will be imagined to form a nasal pit. So this nasal pit is communicated with the stomatodium. So this nasal pit, what happened is deepened to form a nasal sac. So I show this is a nasal pit is deepened to form a nasal sac. So this nasal sac, this is the ventral opening of nasal sac, gives origin to anterior nasal aperture. So now this nasal sac is separated from the oral cavity, one important membrane. That membrane is called as oronasal membrane. This oronasal membrane will start rupture at the time of 6th week of embryo. So during the time after rupture, this oronasal membrane is converted to form a primitive conae. So this primitive conae communicate nasal cavity with the oral cavity. So this primitive conae, where it is present behind the primary palate. So here this is the medial nasal process. We know the medial nasal process gives rise to primary palate. So now this primitive conae is formed after the rupture of oronasal membrane. So what is the main function of this primitive conae? It is going to form the is going to communicate the nasal sac with the oral cavity. After the formation of secondary palate, what happens? This primitive cone is converted into definite cone. So this definite cone communicate the nasal cavity with the oropharynx. So the dorsal opening of nasal sac is give origin to posterior nasal aperture. So this posterior nasal aperture communicate the nasal cavity with the oropharynx. So here, when this maxillary process grow medially, this medial nasal process also grow towards medially. The frontal nasal process became narrow. As a result, there is a formation of nasal septum. So what is the fate of this lateral nasal processes? This lateral nasal process gives rise to ala of nose. This is the lateral nasal processes. So this is the lateral nasal processes give rise to ala of the nose. So here in the lateral wall, there is an appearance of nasal concha. So this nasal concha is nothing but it is an elevation which is present along the lateral wall of the nasal cavity. We have the three elevation, or you can say three concha. We have a superior, middle and inferior concha. So where the nasal placode is formed, the nasal placode is nothing but it is an ectodermal thickening which is present on either side of the midline. Understand? So this ectodermal thickening gives rise to olfactory epithelium which is present in the roof of the nasal cavity. If you talk about, I will summarize the nasal cavity. The nasal pit deepens to form a nasal sac. This anterior opening of nasal sac forming the anterior nasal aperture. So after formation of secondary palate, what happened? This primitive cone is converted into definite cone. What is the main function of this definite cone? Communicate the nasal cavity with the oropharynx. So the dorsal opening of nasal sac gives rise to posterior nasal aperture. What is the fate of posterior nasal aperture? It is going to communicate the nasal cavity with the oropharynx. The original olfactory palate, here whatever the ectoderm is thickening, this ectoderm gives rise to olfactory epithelium which is present in the roof of the nasal cavity, and the lateral nasal process gives rise to ala of nose. This lateral wall of the nasal cavity consists many elevations. So it consists of three elevations. It's called as concha. We are having superior concha, middle and inferior concha. So this is about the development of nasal cavity. So next we'll go to the development of eye. So here what happened? First, around the forebrain vesicle, the ectoderm is got thickened to form a lens placode. So this lens placode, it lies above and lateral to the nasal pit. So later what happened? This lens placode is separated from the surface ectoderm and buried into the underlying mesoderm. So after buried into the underlying mesoderm, it leads to bulging of highball. Initially it lies laterally in the angle between lateral nasal process and maxillary process. So when the maxillary process grow towards medially, simultaneously the frontal nasal process become thin and the medial nasal process also grows towards medially. At the time what happened? This bulging of highball come to the face forward. Now this surface ectoderm which covers the lens placode is going to give rise to three important structures, that is epithelial lining of cornea, epithelial lining of conjunctiva and lacrimal gland. And this lens placode give rise to lens, and this lens placode enclosed by bilaminar layer, this is called as optic vesicle. This optic vesicle consists of two parts, anterior 1/5 and posterior 4/5. So this anterior 1/5 give rise to two important structure. Number one, ciliary body and iris. And posterior 1/5, it consists of posterior 4/5. It consists of two layers, inner and outer. This outer layer is gave rise to pigmented layer of retina, and inner layer gave rise to neural layer of retina. So this is the brief introductions about the development of eye. So okay, next we'll go to the development of ear. So this development of ear is developed in relation to the first ectodermal cleft. You already know we are having a pharyngeal arches. This arches is covered by ectoderm. This ectoderm dips into groove to form a ectodermal cleft. So this here is developed in relation to the first ectodermal cleft. In the first ectodermal cleft, especially the dorsal end, we can see the series of mesodermal thickening. Or you can say hillock. 3 mesodermal thickening will be seen along the caudal border of mandibular arch. One more 3 mesodermal thickening will be seen along the cranial border of hyoid arch. So this mesodermal thickening which is coming from the mandibular arch gives origin to helix, crus of helix and tragus. So these are the derivatives which is coming from the mesodermal thickening from the mandibular arch. And next, the 3 mesodermal thickening which is arises from the cranial border of the hyoid gives rise to antihelix, antitragus and lobule of here. So we finished the development of face. Next we'll go to the clinical anomalies. Just you want to know some clinical anomalies which is related to the development of face. So first, this is very, very important, that is called as first arch syndrome. So this first arch syndrome is mainly due to failure of, or you can say insufficient migration of neural crest cells to the first arch, especially during time of 4th week. It leads to 2 manifestations called Treacher-Collins syndrome and one more syndrome, that is Perry-Robins syndrome. The Treacher-Collins syndrome, it is a genetic disorder. It is an autosomal dominant genetic disorder. So what is the main defects? It is defect in the mainly in the chromosome 5. So what are the clinical features which comes under the Treacher-Collins syndrome? Number 1, hypoplasia of zygomatic bone, or you can say cheekbone. And there will be defect in the lower eyelids, and defects in the development of ear, and downward slanting of palpebral fissure. So these are the main features to be seen under Treacher-Collins syndrome. Next we'll go for Perry-Robins syndrome. So this is also a genetic disorder. It is mainly due to defects in the chromosome number 2, 11 and 19. Sorry, 17. So what are the symptoms which comes under Perry-Robins syndrome? Number 1, underdevelopment of mandible. Number 2, posterior displacement of tongue. And leads to what happen? Upper airway obstruction. And finally there will be a cleft palate. This is about Perry-Robins syndrome. Next, facial cleft. Here the facial cleft, what I told, the first the maxillary process fused with the lateral nasal process. Before fusion there is a groove. The groove is called as nasolacrimal groove. Here what happened, the ectodermal cells will be proliferate. It will be buried into the underlying mesoderm to form a nasolacrimal duct. Sometimes the maxillary process unable to fuse with lateral nasal process. In this condition what happened, this nasolacrimal duct will be exposed to exterior. So this condition is called as facial cleft. And next, unilateral cleft lip or hair lip. In this condition is mainly due to failure of maxillary process fused with the medial nasal process of one side. If it is bilateral, means failure of fusion of maxillary process with medial nasal process of both the side. This is bilateral hair lip. What do you mean by macrostomia and microstomia? So inadequate fusion of maxillary process and mandibular process leads to abnormal wide mouth. This condition is called as macrostomia. In the case of microstomia, too much fusion of maxillary process and mandibular process leads to small mouth. This condition is called as microstomia. So these are the common anomalies will be seen in later to the development of face. Hello everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this session, I am going to discuss about maxillary nerve. Maxillary nerve, it is a second division of trigeminal nerve. It is the second division of trigeminal nerve and it is a purely sensory nerve. It is a purely sensory nerve. So next we will see about the course of the maxillary nerve. So the maxillary nerve, once it arises from the trigeminal ganglion, it proceeds forwards in the middle cranial fossa. So if you see, this is the middle cranial fossa now. Here we can see trigeminal ganglion. From the trigeminal ganglion, an important branch, that branch is called as the second division, that is the maxillary nerve. So this maxillary nerve will be passes, that is, or you can say this proceed forwards in the middle cranial fossa. It passes along the lateral wall of the cavernous sinuses and leaves the middle cranial fossa by passing through the one important foramen. That foramen is called as foramen rotundum. And finally reach the pterygopalatine fossa. So this is the foramen rotundum. So this is the course within the middle cranial fossa. So in the middle cranial fossa, it proceeds forwards and it passes along the lateral wall of the cavernous sinuses and leaves the middle cranial fossa by passing through the foramen rotundum and finally reaches the pterygopalatine fossa. In the pterygopalatine fossa, it undergoes straight course and going to suspend the one important ganglion, that is the largest peripheral parasympathetic ganglion, that is the pterygopalatine ganglion. And leaves the pterygopalatine fossa by passing through the inferior orbital fissure and reaches the orbit. Now once it enters into the orbit, now this nerve is called as infraorbital nerve. This infraorbital nerve, it passes along the floor of the orbit. So this is the flow, it passes along the floor of the orbit, it passes along the groove and canal and finally emerge out from the infraorbital foramen. Once it emerges out from the infraorbital foramen, it gives a three terminal branches. Number one will be the palpebral branch. Number two, nasal branch. Number three, labial branch. So these are the three terminal branches which is arises from the infraorbital nerve. Now let's see the branches of maxillary nerve. First, in the middle cranial fossa, what's the name of the branch? Number one, that is the meningeal branch. Meningeal branch. This meningeal branch, it's going to supply the durameter of middle cranial fossa. In the pterygopalatine fossa, it gives rise to three branches. Number one, ganglionic branch. Number two, zygomatic branch. Number three, posterior superior alveolar nerve. So this is the three branches which is coming from the pterygopalatine fossa. Now this is the ganglionic branch. So this ganglionic branch is going to suspend the one important ganglion. That ganglion is called as pterygopalatine ganglion. So this ganglionic branch convey sensory fibers from orbital periosteum, from mucous membrane of nose, from palate and pharynx. And this branch also contain postganglionic secretory motor fiber to lacrimal gland. Next we'll go to the zygomatic branch. Now you can see in this diagram, this is the zygomatic branch. This zygomatic branch, it's enter into the orbit through an important fissure. That fissure is called as inferior orbital fissure. Now once it enter into the orbit, this zygomatic branch divides into two branches. Number one will be the zygomaticofacial nerve. Number two will be the zygomaticotemporal nerve. So these are two important branches which is present in the orbit. So this zygomatic facial nerve, it reaches the face by passing through the foramen which is present in the zygomatic bone. It going to supply the skin over the cheeks, because this is a sensory nerve. And next, this zygomatic temporal nerve, it reaches the temporal region and going to supply the skin over the temporal region. So this zygomatic temporal nerve also contains secretory motor fiber to the lacrimal gland. And then one more branch, that is, we'll see the posterior superior alveolar nerve. So this is the posterior superior alveolar nerve. So this posterior superior alveolar nerve, it passes downwards and passes to the foramina which is present in the posterior surface of the maxilla and supplies the one important sinuses, that is the maxillary sinuses, and also it's going to supply the third molar teeth and adjoining gums. And this posterior superior alveolar nerve, it breaks up and gives rise to superior dental plexus. And next branch, in the orbit, what are the branches? So in the orbit, it gives rise to two branches. Number one will be the middle superior alveolar nerve. In the orbit, it gives rise to two branches. Number one will be the middle superior alveolar nerve and anterior superior alveolar nerve. You can see this is the, in the orbit, one branch, this branch is the middle superior alveolar nerve. So this middle superior alveolar nerve, it passes downwards along the lateral wall of the maxillary sinus and breaks up to form a superior dental plexus and going to supply the premolar teeth and adjoining gums. And you can see this is the anterior superior alveolar nerves. So this anterior superior alveolar nerve, it passes downwards along the anterior wall of the maxillary sinus, or you can say one important canal is present. That canal is called as canalis sinuses. So it passes through the canalis sinuses and divides into two branches. One branch will be the dental branch and will be the nasal branch. So this anterior superior alveolar nerve, it gives rise to two branches. Number one will be the dental branch. Number two will be the nasal branch. So this dental branch breaks up to form a superior dental plexus and going to supplies incisor teeth and canine teeth and adjoining gums. Whereas the nasal branch is going to supply the lateral wall of the nasal cavity including inferior meatus. And next we'll go to the terminal branches. That is the palpebral branch, nasal branch and labial branch. So this palpebral branch, it passes, so here we can see this is the infraorbital foramen. So this palpebral branch is going to supply the skin of the lower eyelids, and nasal branch is going to supply the skin of the side of the nose, whereas the labial branch, it passes downwards, it is going to supply the skin of the upper lip. So this is about the maxillary nerve. So I will give the brief description about the maxillary nerve now. So the maxillary nerve, it is a second division of trigeminal nerve and it is a purely sensory nerve. So it proceeds forwards in the middle cranial fossa. In the middle cranial fossa, it passes along the lateral wall of the cavernous sinuses and then it leaves the middle cranial fossa by passing through the one important foramen. That foramen is called as foramen rotundum. So once it leaves the foramen rotundum, it finally enter into the one important fossa. That fossa is called as pterygopalatine fossa. So in the pterygopalatine fossa, it undergoes a straight course and leaves the pterygopalatine fossa by passing through the inferior orbital fissure and finally reaches the orbit. Once it reaches the orbit, this nerve is called as nerve, infraorbital nerve. So this in the orbit, this infraorbital nerve, it passes along the floor. First it passes through the groove and passes through the canal and finally emerges out from the infraorbital foramen. So once it emerges from the infraorbital foramen, it gives rise to three terminal branches. Number 1 will be the palpebral branch, number 2 will be the nasal branch, number 3 will be the labial branch. Now let's see the branches. In the middle cranial fossa, it gives a meningeal branch. It is going to supply the durameter of middle cranial fossa. In the pterygopalatine fossa, it is going to give rise to three branches. Number 1 will be the ganglionic branch. Number 2 will be the zygomatic branch. Number 3 will be the posterior superior alveolar nerve. In the orbit, it going rise to two branches. Number 1 will be the middle superior alveolar nerve, and this is the anterior superior alveolar nerve. So all this superior, there is a posterior, middle and anterior, they are break up and they are joined to form a superior dental plexus. This superior dental plexus is going to supply all the molar, premolar and incisor and canine teeth and adjoining gums. And next come to the terminal branches. This palpebral branch is going to supply the skin of upper lower eyelid. Our nasal branch is going to supply the skin of the side of the nose, and labial branch is going to supply the skin of the upper lip. So this is about the maxillary nerve. Thank you. Hello everyone. In this session I am going to discuss about the dural folds. In the cranial cavity, the durameter consists of two layers, that is outer endosteal layer and inner meningeal layer. So in the durameter, in the cranial cavity, it consists of two layers, outer endosteal layer, inner meningeal layer. So this outer endosteal layers, it lines the inner surface of the skull on forming the endocranium. What about this meningeal layers? This meningeal layers, it forming a numerous folds. And these folds divide the cranial cavity into different compartments which lodges the different parts of the brain. So this inner meningeal layer gives rise to 4 folds of durameter. What are the 4 folds? Falx cerebri, tentorium cerebelli, falx cerebelli, and diaphragma sella. So these are the 4 dural folds will be seen in the cranial cavity. First we'll see the falx cerebri. So what is the shape of the falx cerebri? It is a sickle shape. It is a sickle shape. So if you see the shape of the falx cerebri, it will be like this. It's somewhat sickle shape. So if you see, this is the 2 cerebral hemisphere now. Now you can see this is a 2 cerebral hemisphere, and you can see in the middle we can see there is a medial longitudinal fissure. So this falx cerebri, where it is lodges in the median longitudinal fissures. Median longitudinal fissure. So this falx cerebri consists of 2 ends. What are the 2 ends? We are having anterior end and this is the posterior end. And we are having a 2 border, and this is the upper border and lower border. And when you see this is the 2 cerebral hemisphere, the falx cerebri will be present like this. So it consists of 2 surfaces, that is right and left surfaces. We are having 2 surfaces, right and left surfaces. I already mentioned the anterior end. So the anterior end of the falx cerebri is narrow and it is attached to the crista galli. The anterior end is attached to the crista galli. If you see, this is the cranial cavity now. So imagine this is the middle cranial fossa. In the anterior cranial fossa, you can see one bony projection. This projection is called as crista galli. So the anterior end is where it is attached to the crista galli. Where the posterior end is attached. So this posterior end is broad and it is attached to the upper surface of tentorium cerebelli. Upper surface of tentorium cerebelli. Imagine now this is the falx cerebri. It will be like this. So here the roof of the posterior cranial fossa is formed by tentorium cerebelli. So what happened? This falx cerebri, the anterior end is attached to the crista galli and the posterior end is attached to the upper surface of the tentorium cerebelli. And you can see the two borders. So this is the upper border. So this upper border is convex. It is attached to the lips of sagittal sulcus. Lips of sagittal sulcus. So the upper border is convex and where it is attached to the lips of sagittal sulcus, and the lower border is concave and this rests on the upper surface of corpus callosum. The lower border is concave and where it is rests on the upper surface of the corpus callosum. And the two surfaces, this is the right and left surfaces, is related to the medial surface of cerebral hemisphere. And what are the venous sinuses? What are the venous sinuses related to the falx cerebri? Along the upper border, we can see the superior sagittal sinus. Superior sagittal sinus. Along the lower border, we can see inferior sagittal sinus. Along the attached margin, we can see a straight sinuses. So we have three sinuses will be related to the falx cerebri. Number one will be the superior sagittal sinus, inferior sagittal sinus and straight sinuses. So these are the sinuses related to the falx cerebri. And next we will move on to tentorium cerebelli. Tentorium cerebelli. This tentorium cerebelli, it is a tent shaped. So it's going to form the roof for the posterior cranial fossa. So it's going to form the roof for the posterior cranial fossa. So imagine this is the posterior cranial fossa below. So this tentorium cerebelli form roof for the posterior cranial fossa. So this tentorium cerebelli is going to separate the occipital lobe of cerebrum to cerebellum. So this is act as a demarcation. Above the tentorium cerebelli, we can see the part of cerebrum, and below the tentorium cerebelli, we can see the cerebellum. So the tentorium cerebelli is going to form a roof for the posterior cranial fossa. A roof for the posterior cranial fossa and divides the. It's going to divide the occipital lobe of cerebrum to the cerebellum. So, if you see the tentorium cerebelli, it consists of two margin. What are the two margin? We are having free margin and attached margin. What is the shape of the free margin? This free margin is somewhat U-shape. Imagine now, this is the cranial fossa. And you can see this is the middle cranial fossa and this is the anterior clinoid processes. Anterior clinoid processes. The ends of free margin is attached to the anterior clinoid process. So the ends of this is the free margin of tentorium cerebelli is attached to the anterior clinoid process. So this margin bounds on forming a notch. The notch is called as tentorial notch. This tentorial notch lodges midbrain. This tentorial notch lodges midbrain. And next we'll go for attached margin. So this attached margin anterolaterally it is attached to the superior border of petrous part of temporal bone. Anterolaterally, it is attached to the superior border of petrous part of temporal bone. Posterolaterally, it is attached to the lips of transverse sulcus. Posterolaterally, it is attached to the lips of transverse sulcus. So, attached margin, anterolaterally it is attached to the superior border of petrous part of temporal bone, and posterolaterally it is attached to the lips of transverse sulcus. Okay, what are the sinuses related to the attached margin? So, you can see superior petrosal sinuses, superior petrosal sinuses, transverse sinuses, and on the upper surface you can see the straight sinuses. So, we can see the three sinuses related to the tentorium cerebelli. You can see the triangular area just where the attached margin, the free margin crossing each other. You can see the triangular area. This triangular area is called as oculomotor triangle. This oculomotor triangle is pierced by third cranial nerve. You can see here, this is the pierced by third cranial nerve. And next we'll go for the falx cerebelli. The falx cerebelli, it is a small sickle-shaped durameter. The falx cerebelli is the small sickle-shaped durameter. Falx cerebelli, it is a small sickle-shaped durameter. Imagine this is a tentorium cerebelli. Above the tentorium cerebelli, the falx cerebelli will be present, and below the tentorium cerebelli, falx cerebelli is present. It is a small sickle-shaped. And this falx cerebelli, it's projecting forwards towards the posterior cerebellar notch. It projecting forwards towards the posterior cerebellar notch. It consists of two margin, anterior concave margin, it's free, and posterior convex margin is attached to the internal occipital crest. So if you see, this is the cranial fossa now. This is the middle cranial fossa. And the posterior cranial fossa, you can see one important foramen. That foramen is called as foramen magnum. Here one in the occipital bone, in the inner aspect of the occipital bones, you can see one protuberance that is called as internal occipital protuberance. So the falx cerebelli is extends from internal occipital protuberance to the posterior margin of the foramen magnum. So the posterior convex margin is attached to the internal occipital crest, and they are related to one important sinuses, that is the occipital sinuses. Occipital sinuses. And next we'll go for the diaphragma sella. So diaphragma sella, it is a horizontal fold of durameter. It is the horizontal fold of durameter. Next will be the diaphragma sella. It is the horizontal fold of durameter. It extends from tuberculum sella to dorsum sella. So if you see, this is a middle cranial fossa. So in the middle cranial fossa, this is the body of sphenoid bone. In the body, in the center, we can see the aperture. This is called as hypophyseal fossa. So this diaphragma sella, it is a horizontal fold of durameter. So here we can see the tuberculum sella and here we can see the dorsum sella. So it extends from tuberculum sella to the dorsum sella. And in this diaphragma sella, in center, there is an opening, or you can say aperture, for the passage of stalk of pituitary gland. So this is about the diaphragma sella. So this meningeal layer, what happens? It divides the cranial cavity to different compartments by means of 4 folds. What are the 4 folds? They are having a falx cerebelli, tentorium cerebelli, falx cerebelli and diaphragma sella. So this is about the dural folds. Thank you.